Everyone wants credit, but few want consequence. And that's the line between responsibility and accountability. And most people will pretend that there isn't one, but there is. Responsibility is claiming the action, and accountability is owning the outcome. One is about, that was me, that was my choice, and the other is standing in what that actually means. Responsibility without accountability is just ego in a cape. It looks like ownership, but it hides when the bill comes due, right? Responsibility is the choice, and accountability is what follows that choice. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of IconicFreedom, the formula. We're setting the standard for accountability and responsibility, the ownership of your choices, and the responsibility, that outcome, owning that outcome and everything that follows with it. So I've talked about before that these things are a loop, right? It's a choice loop that, from one choice comes the outcome, everything that follows, and then you go into the next choice. It's not like you just make a choice and then everything stops. The world does not stop. It keeps on rolling, right? What was that? Proud Mary, keep on rolling? It just keeps going. It just keeps going. And you can't break the loop and still call yourself free, because you're not. If you think that being accountable and responsible is freedom, but that is on a continuum of the rest of your life. And that's where the adulting part really comes into play, right? Because you realize it's not just this choice, it's every choice after this choice as well. So you're either governing your life by responsible decisions, or you're just allowing your life to be governed by consequences. And there's no middle ground. So think about that for a second. You can govern, or you can be governed by your choices, by your integrity, by what you claim and what you carry with you in terms of your own integrity and character. Because here is the truth, right? This is a reality. Responsibility of choice obligates accountability of outcomes. And if you want to live free, you've got to stop pretending that those two can be separated. Responsibility of choice obligates accountability of outcomes. So when we start talking about this stuff, it's, credit and blame and the illusion of control. Responsibility gets thrown around a lot. Usually when things go right, people say, oh, I built this, or I made that happen, or I took responsibility for my success. But accountability is the ownership of that outcome. Now, that's the one that people will kind of avoid or run from, especially when the outcome doesn't match the story that they're telling themselves or telling others. When it works, people want to take the credit, right? They will say, oh, I'm responsible. Yep, I'm the one that did that. And when it crashes, what do people most often do? Oh, that wasn't my fault. It was because of this. It was because of that. Then they start blaming. And it's an interesting thing that obviously that's not responsibility. I say that it's brand management. I think that people, what they're doing is they're trying to manage their own brand by assigning responsibility or accountability for something to other people, when in fact it's listen, you made the choice, you own it. You made it, you eat it. That's where, people want that credit for their choices, but they don't want the cost. And that's where accountability steps in, because accountability doesn't care about, how well you tell the story. It only cares whether or not you owned the outcome. And I say that as if, accountability or responsibility are these entities, but it's the reality of nature. Nature doesn't care about this stuff. If you look at nature, it is unambiguous, if that's the right word for this. It's just doing what it does. It's not setting in judgment. We do that. We're the ones that place judgment. We place, whether or not something is beautiful or not, we're the ones that subjectively make that comment. We don't really know if that's what it is or not. We just filter through our world, and that's what we see. So you cannot claim freedom in your life if you're still outsourcing the responsibility of your choices and the accountability of your results. I wrote that down. That's why it sounds that way. You cannot claim freedom in your life if you're still outsourcing the responsibility of your choices and the accountability of your results. And what does that mean? That means you can't claim freedom if you're still outsourcing your own cause and effect in life. Accountability is where your integrity shows up. Not in your mouth, but in your life. Blame is the cheapest currency in the world, right? That's a good one. Blame is the cheapest currency in the world, and most people spend it like it's unlimited, like the ATM is unlimited. But freedom will say, that was my call, that was my outcome, and I own it all, right? We know that the formula is this choice, this standard that we're setting for ourselves. It's the choice and the ownership, and that equals the integrity and the character. Most people don't have a responsibility problem. They have a choice problem. And even more than that, they have an ownership problem. They make the choice, but then they try to disown the outcome. And what's interesting is they want to act like they're unaware that it's a choice. But when you're making the choice, you're making the choice. You say to yourself, I choose that. I choose the pasta over the meat. I choose the sauce over the wine. I mean, it's and whatever it is in life. So, okay, let's break this down plainly. Responsibility is choice. Accountability is ownership. Choice and ownership equal integrity and character because there are outcomes and everything that follows the outcome. That's it. It's not complicated. People want to make a big deal of this. They want to try to over-explain it. No. Responsibility is your choice. Accountability is your ownership. Those things create your integrity and character, who you are. And you've heard that statement before where people will say, your integrity is who you are when others aren't looking. In many ways, that's very correct because this is who you are 24/7. So whether somebody's there or not, you're still making choice and you're still owning outcomes. So, people that want to hide behind a why, no such thing, right? It's just inconvenient for people who still want to hide behind a why. They don't they don't want to think that this is complicated, and yet when it does look complicated, they go down this road. There are no wrong decisions, in a sense, just decisions that come with outcomes. And, maybe what we didn't want, but we still chose. But when you think about it, all of your choices are for you, for your benefit, for your understanding of life. You can even say, and we've talked about motivation and self-interest, you can say, I'm doing this for this person. But the reality is you're doing it for yourself. And when you drill it down, that's when you realize that, I made that choice because I wanted to feel good. That's always been my hypothesis. And I still think that it's true today. I've yet to see it not be proven. So You chose it. Now you show up for it. And credibility isn't about image. It's not about how slick you sound or how carefully you curate your persona, if you will. Credibility is reputation. And reputation is built on integrity and character, not optics, not branding. And in the end, that's all you've really got. Everything else is going to fade. I put that on my LinkedIn years ago that, your accountability and responsibility, leads to your integrity and character. And that is what your reputation is built upon. And if you don't have good reputation, people will know it and people won't want to work with you. I mean, that's just the way it is. And if people realize that in your personal life, they're not going to want to hang around you. The thing that people do a lot of is they scam themselves. And the scam that they're running on themselves is that they think that they're stuck, but they're not. You're not stuck. You're just being unaccountable. And you're being tied to outcomes. And that is the scam. The one that you are running on yourself. There's no development of self without the self-reflection that leads to the self-correction. And there's no growth if you're still pretending you had nothing to do with where you are. If you are unwilling to acknowledge your contribution to the situation that you placed yourself in, you're not developing, you're just performing. You're branding your pain instead of breaking your pattern. That's something else I wrote down. You're branding your pain instead of breaking your pattern. So the reality of the fact that unless you self-evaluate, you self-reflect to self-correct, you're not going to find any growth. You're just going to pretend that you had nothing to do with where you are in life. Listen, you made those choices, as hard as they are to accept. You made the choice to do X, Y, and Z. I said this in my book, and I know it's a hard reality for people, but the people that died in 9/11 in the towers made a choice to go in the building that day, and they take ownership of whatever the outcome is. It doesn't negate and it doesn't absolve the people that caused the collapse. It doesn't do any of that. All it does is say, look, I own the fact that I walked in that building that day, and I own whatever the outcome is and how I respond to it. A friend and I, we worked at the Empire State Building, and there was a gentleman there that he was I think as the story, if I remember, it's been a long time, but he was walking into the building and this whole thing starts to happen, and he was in the other building, not Tower 1 or Tower 2, but he was in, I think, going into where the observation deck was. The plane hits, he turns around and walks out, doesn't care. Does not care that I'm supposed to be going to my job and blah, 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 blah. He walks out of the building. He took responsibility for his life. He did not outsource that to somebody else. He said, no, I'm not going in. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going to be a part of this. And whatever is going to go on, I will figure it out. And you know what? He lived a couple of decades later as a result of that choice, because he took ownership in that moment that I got to do what I got to do, that internal authority that we just talked about. So if you are unwilling to acknowledge your contribution to a situation where you placed yourself, then you're not developing. You are just performing. And you're branding your pain instead of breaking your pattern. Write that down. You're branding your pain instead of breaking your pattern. People say they want growth. but they want it without the discomfort of ownership. You got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That if you want to get out of where you're stuck, you got to be okay telling yourself that this is going to take a little bit to get out of, and I got to be okay with being uncomfortable until I clean up the schmutz and I get to where I want to be, which is your happiness. Happiness all the time. A lot of people will say, oh, well, that was just bad luck. Yeah, but that's just an easy way out. That's somebody dodging that harder reality. It's not bad luck. It's a pattern of avoidance. You can say, oh, wow, that person just seems to have a lot of bad luck. No, they have a lot of not taking ownership of their choices. Life isn't happening to you. It's happening because of you and all of your choices and everything that follows. Because of your choices, because of your ownership, or your lack of it. You can do all you can to deny reality, but reality will not deny you. And if you were on my Instagram this week, you saw that phrase. Because when I wrote that down for today's podcast, it hit me really hard that it's like, I don't know how often people realize that. You can deny the reality that's happening, but reality is nature bringing you what is, not what you want it to be, but what is. It will not deny. It will not deny you. It's in your face, whether you like it or not. So why not make reality your friend? Embrace reality as a friend to be able to say, bring more to me. Hug me in the reality to show it to me so that I can make good choices in my life. I want to see what's really going on, not what I think is going on or what I hope is going to happen. No, I want to see what's going on so I make good choices for myself. Because when we get into, our emotion, we're out of reality, and we start making choices in emotion, then things don't go well. They don't unfold well because we're in another state that is not reality. And eventually, like I said earlier, that bill's going to come due. That invoice will come due. And whether you're ready or not, it's going to get paid. Whether you're ready or not to pay, it's going to get paid. One way or the other. People will rise above chaos, drama, and repeated failure. They will rise above that. And the people who rise above chaos and the drama and the repeated failure, they don't sit there and ask, why is this happening to me? They ask, what did I choose that brought this into my life? And the answer, when it is honestly made without flinching, is X, Y, and Z. And that's where your freedom is going to begin, is when you stop looking at things of why is this happening to me, and instead asking yourself, what did I choose that brought me to this moment in life, to this situation in life? The freedom of self, you want freedom, then you need to stop running from the one thing that makes freedom real, and that's your choice and the ownership of what follows. True freedom, so it's not like doing whatever it is you want in life. Sure, you can do whatever you want in life. I've said often, that no law stopped a man from doing that which he was hell-bent on doing. Sure, you can go ahead and do that. But it's also that development, that maturity of being willing to face the outcome of whatever you choose. That's responsibility, that's accountability, that's sovereignty. There is no freedom without the conscious. intentional ownership of every moment you've chosen to live. There is no freedom without the conscious, intentional ownership of every moment you've chosen to live. You want to know where that's written? In my book. And what I find fascinating about it is it's not just some moments. It's not just the good ones. It's all of them. Now, I posit to you there are no good or bad moments. There are just moments and how we decide to interpret them. But you want to change your life? Start by owning it. Start by recognizing that your choices are the architects of your outcomes. And from here on out, from this moment forward, I have said this for years to myself and to others, your life can change on a dime. Society, humanity can change on a dime if you just start taking responsibility and accountability. The responsibility of choice obligates accountability of outcomes. And people of high integrity and health, they don't make incorrect choices in life. They just don't do it. You know, I've made that comment before that some people seem to always be hitting speed bumps, but it's because they are not taking ownership. So when you think about it, when people live high integrity and they have good health in terms of choices in life, they don't make incorrect choices because they choose from being in an alignment, from awareness, from freedom with reality. And if you think about that people that seem to always be making really good choices, they're always in alignment with reality, with the awareness and the freedom that they made the choice. So here's a couple of things I wrote down to ask yourself regarding choice. Are you reacting from something from ego, or are you responding from ownership? Are you defending your pain, or are you correcting your pattern? Are you choosing to stay asleep, or are you waking up to what's really yours? And I think when you start to ask yourself those questions, it always comes back to you. You can't have it both ways, right? You don't need to make someone else wrong to do something that is right for you. You just need to take the wheel and stop pretending that it's not yours. So, I said this last week. You want to know what the sound of freedom is? It's that. It's letting go of being right and letting in what's right for you. And that's how that works. That's where that goes. And if you are able to stop reacting from your ego and start responding from your ownership, not asking, why is life doing this to me, but how did I place myself in this situation? And sometimes that's going to be a lifetime of choices that you've made. But that's okay, right? You're here to clean up the schmutz. That's why you're doing this. That's why you're creating your standard. That's why you're trying to move to a place you're efforting your own health and growth and integrity and character. And you've chosen not to be asleep anymore in your choices and whimsically be out there making choices, but to wake up to what's really yours. And that's the sound of freedom. And we are at the end of another podcast. Thank you so much for joining me this weekend. Hey, listen, hit that like button if you would. Share it with your family and friends. You never know how it's going to help them on their endeavor. If anything resonated with you, drop me a comment, shoot me an email, let me know. This podcast isn't just about me. This is about you too. And I'd love to support you in your own efforts and endeavor towards your own health and freedom, most especially. All the good links are down there to X and Facebook and TikTok and all that. Subscribe if that is something that you are moved to do. That's always terrific. And let each care for self, and all will be cared for.